Thank you. After lunch, I think it's better to start with a short, relaxing video introducing the Italian way, and I think you must see this one so you better understand how we are developed our law on the loudness control.
Caffè. 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 Espresso macchiato caldo. Decaffeinato bollente e poca schiuma. Molto lungo, tiepido in tazza grande. Caffè d'orzo, macchiato freddo, doppio zucchero. Ristretto semifreddo in tazza piccola senza schiuma. Americano corretto grappa con latte, doppia panna, tazza a parte. Hello? Pronto?
Palla in area, tiro, gol!
Okay. Okay, now I think you will better understand what's happening in Italy as concerning the law on loudness. But let's start this presentation with a brief history of advertising. Today and also a little bit yesterday, people talk as for advertising as one of the most important problems for loudness control. And maybe not all of you know that the first official, because it seems that there has been something before, advertising on TV was in 1941 during, or maybe before a baseball game between Brooklyn and Philadelphia Phillips. And it was only a static picture with a voice saying America runs on Bull Overtime. This is just for an historical information. And what is important to understand is if people really annoying of loudness in advertising, and there have been several pools, several research on this, and one of the most important is one done in UK that from about 10 years they monitoring how many complaints received the Association for Broadcast Advertising and Code, and they say that on the average they receive about 200 and 250 calls every year about people that complain about the loudness of advertising. This started from 10 years ago, but there are some new research on this, and especially in USA there was a recent poll last year where they asked to the consumer, to the subscriber, if they have problem in loudness, and they about 90% of the people say that there are problems and that loudness in advertising is quite annoying. So the problem seems to still exist, and in some way seems that it is growing during the last years. Also, in the official document from ABU, the technical document 3342, there is a short sentence that in some way expresses this very important point, that many of the, one of the most important causes that push us to analyze again the procedure for loudness normalization start exactly from advertising problem. But who should regulate the loudness in Europe? Who should in some way control and define the rule for this level? In principle, should be the authority on telecommunication. The problem is that in Europe we have how many? At least 45 authorities. So each of these one, in principle, according to the European law, should say something about the level of advertising or everything that in some way have to normalize and regulate the transmission for radio and television and so on. So they have in charge this kind of problem. But not only, we have also some transversal association, European, that in some way have to say something about this kind of problem, and one is the Association for Single Voice and Advertising, Self-Regulation, the other one is the one on telecommunication, but I think there are maybe more. In principle, very few of this body dedicated some attention to this problem. In particular, in UK, there is the BCAP that in some way is tied to Ofcom that have regulated officially how to control the loudness in advertising. In Poland, there is the authority that also emanated a law 1 year ago, and in Italy also there is a law now about how to regulate the loudness in the audio, in the radio and television transmission. The problem is that each country define its own measure, methods, threshold, and so on. So you can imagine what happens if in Europe each country will start defining a different methodology to measure or to control the loudness. It could be a very difficult situation, especially for people that produce instruments or something like that. But let's see in detail these three examples, how they work. In United Kingdom, there is this association that auto-regulate the code for advertising, not only, of course, for loudness. Loudness is only a small part, and you can find the rule about loudness in paragraph 4.7 of the code. The code has been just published in a new version last September, so more or less 9 months ago, and the rules are more or less the one they have before. They defined this rule 2 years ago, I think. And of course, there is a first sentence. You can find this kind of sentence more or less in all the European regulation, also in the American one, where there is a statement that in some way say that the loudness should not annoying the listener and should have the same level of the program. Of course, this from a technical point of view doesn't meaning a lot. So depending on the measure you see today, if you use getting, if you do not use getting, things are very different. So the sentence and the principle is clear, but the technical way to implement this principle is not clear at all. And in case of the BCAP solution, they have several possibilities. You can use peak meter, or you can use loudness defined in ITU 7070, and you have different threshold depending the solution you have choose. But of course, these are not compatible. I mean, you can say, okay, if your loudness is 60 dB louder in peak than the program, it's okay. Or you can say if the integrated loudness measured with the ABU or with the 7070 recommendation should be the same inside 1 dB and so on. But generally speaking, doesn't mean that you have a unique solution for controlling the loudness. So it's a good law, but in some way must be refined in terms to select only one methodology. And of course, we see this morning, probably the peak one is not the best one. So this kind of rule should be definitively formed as a measure only on integrated loudness. A completely different strategy was defined in Poland. They use the ITU 7070 as measure, but they only compare a small part of the handling of the program with the following advertising. So they only say, okay, I don't mind of integrated loudness and so on. I only to see if when the program finish and the advertising start, there is a jump, only in the last 30 seconds and the following 30 seconds. And this in some way is very similar to the first Italian solution that was published 3 or 4 years ago, but we, after a very short period of testing this solution, we found that it's not useful. So in Italy we have to change this, and I don't know what will happen in Poland, but today the law in Poland say that we have to compare the last half minutes of the program with the beginning half minutes of the advertising, and you have to do integrated loudness measure using the ITU 7070 and have the same level. So only the jump of program to advertising. The situation is quite different in Italy. It's probably the most complicated one, but you have one point that is very important, that it defines exactly how to get the comparison. Also, this process is quite complicated, but you cannot make any mistakes. Everything is defined very, very in detail. And this is the final situation, the one that is in law today. But as I said before, we start about 4 years ago. The law, the original law, that say that the loudness of advertising shouldn't be higher than the one of the program, is very old. It's 1995. So in 1995, in Italy, we already have a law that says that the power level of the advertising shouldn't be greater than the program. For about 15 years, nothing happened, because nobody knows what means sound power or something like that. And now, with the universal acceptance of the ITU standard, there have been some technical committee that have met with Agicom and with the broadcaster, with some institute, to define how to put all those things together and make a new law. Technically, they use on the basis of the ITU recommendation, but we apply gating also when this one was published. The ABU 128 was not already a recommendation, so we used gating before it was a standard as today, and we only use the long-term reference for measuring the ordinary level that we will see later on. So in some way, from a technical point of view, we anticipated more or the most important steps in normalization and standardization, because 2 years ago we already used in some way a measure that is equal to the one that ITU published 2 weeks or 2 months ago, in March, 2 months ago. So we already define a measure based exactly on the same strategy that the one of ITU published in March of this year. So in some way, we made a very good solution from a technical point of view. But that's all. What's happened in the other country, you know, is the CALM Act.
Issues Bill CALM Act to lower the volume of loud television commercials. The 15th of December, 2010.
The President also signed into law the CALM Act, legislation requiring that the volume of television commercials be the same as the programs they run with.
When I'm watching the game, I don't want those ads coming on loud.
That's right.
I don't want to have to pick up the clicker. You know, this is practical.
When have we
Makes
done?
a difference.
This is a
Right away.
demonstration of flip
And look at this. This is all this.
One-page bill.
One-page bill. That's what I'm saying.
The Senate did turn it into almost 2 pages.
We do run on. We do run on. That's fine.
So why this is important? It's important from a political point of view. We are not joking anymore. No, you now have a law to control the loudness of advertising in USA. That is usually seen as the reference country. So it's not Italy or, I don't know, Greece or something like that. You have a law in the United States that say you cannot transmit advertising with a loudness greater than the program. And this is a very important point from my reference, because when you talk about this problem in many countries and also in Italy, a lot of people say, okay, but it's not important, doesn't matter, you can do as you like it, and so it's not feeling like an important problem. And another point, very important, is that it's not enough to have a self-regulation code between broadcasters. You need a law, because otherwise, as you see today, producers want to push for louder advertising. So if you do not have a law, what's happening is that, for example, let me say in Italy, you have some public broadcasters that in some way are part of ABU and want to fulfill the ABU regulation, and you have other broadcasters that doesn't matter ABU regulation, and they in some way are free, or they can push louder the advertising without any penalty. So a producer will prefer to put advertising in such broadcaster, and you have an economical, not fair comparison between the two, because so the advertiser will prefer to give advertising to that channel that not respect the rule. And in some way, if there is not a law but only an agreement code, some broadcasters, small one or smart broadcaster, can say, okay, I don't agree with this one. It's like the animals that Florian showed this morning. Silvio can say, okay, I am free to push 3 dB up the advertising, so I will get more money. So only if you have a law, so only if you have some penalty, it's possible to have a correct comparison from an economical point of view between different broadcasters. And another important point concerning this fact in USA, that in practice, as the President Obama said, the law is just 1 page. It's very simple. It doesn't treat the technical matter. That's because in some way the law inherited the result of the technical committee. So the law doesn't go inside or in depth detail how to measure and which should be the level and so on. They only say, okay, we have a technical committee, we trust in this technical committee, and you have to do as they say. Not only today, but also if they change the rule, if they change the measure, automatically the law will inherit this one. So the law in practice is only these 3 lines that prescribe a regulation that limits the incorporating by reference and making mandatory the recommendation practice, and then its successor 32 approved by the Advanced Television System Committee. So the law is just a simple sentence that says there is a technical recommendation, you must do as is written in this technical recommendation. So the question is why in Europe we don't do the same? It is easy, it's simple. We have a technical committee that from a scientific point of view has been recognized better than the American one. So in principle it should be very simple. We only need a legislation authority that inherited the ABU technical point. As I say, in Italy we start in 1995, and we take about 15 years to reach the today's solution. We have several problems. We have 2 committees that last 1 or 1.5 years each. So altogether there are about 3 years of work. And only at the end of these 3 years we reach, let me say, an agreement, not completed agreement, but in some way a kind of agreement. The problem is that in a way completely different from the American way, where everything is demanded to a technical committee. In this case, in Italy, most of the problem have been afforded by lawyer. So these people doesn't know nothing about loudness, and when technical people try to explain why you have to use one measure or why you have some problem, they simply don't understand. But they have the final word, so they have to define the law, and this is a very serious problem. From a technical point of view, what we have to use in Italy, we use the exactly BS 1770 filtering and weighting. We use the -70 security threshold for the elimination of the silence, and we use a gating at -8 LU. So all these points exactly fit with the ABU recommendation. There are only 2 very small difference with the ABU recommendation. Is the amplitude of the window of analysis. That in our case could be from 100 milliseconds to 1 second, while in the European recommendation is fixed at 400 milliseconds. And also we do not use overlapped window, while in the European recommendation use 50% or at least 50% of overlapped window. And the only measure we use is the integrated loudness that Florian showed this morning. Oh, now let's go in detail of the Italian methodology. The Italian methodology is based on 2 quantities. One is the unit level, and the other one is the ordinary level. The unit level is in practice the level of the single advertising, the single spot. So the 30-second, 50-second spot. The integrated loudness measured with, for example, the IBU measure is the unit we use for the unit level quantity. The other one is the ordinary level. That is in practice the integral loudness on 5 continuous days of transmission. So you take 5 days, 24-hour days of sound, you make the integral loudness of this very, very long period, and you have the ordinary level. And the comparison is made by the unit level of 1 day with the ordinary level associated, that is exactly the integral loudness of the 5 days before this one. So when you go then to the next day, you use the unit of this day with the ordinary level that is now the integral of the preceding 5 days, and so on. So you compare the loudness of today with the ordinary level that is the integral of the 5 days before. But this is not the measure we use to find an infraction. Now is the quite complicated part. To see if the broadcaster made an infraction, you have to take 50 consecutive units, so 50 consecutive advertising spot, And you have to make the comparison between each single one with the ordinary level. If the comparison is greater than delta, than a value that in the first year was 2.2 LU and today is 1.0 LU, and if the number of advertising is greater than a certain percent that before was 15% and today is 8%, then you have an infraction. So then you can see that the loudness of advertising of this of that broadcaster is not correct. Another point is that you have to choose the initial point, the start point, in a random way. So you do not do this spanning all the 24 hours, but you have to select the starting point in a random way. So selecting one starting point along the 24 hours, then you have to select 50 spots, measure the loudness of each single spot, and compare this with the loudness of the 5 days before, and see if the result fulfill this requirement, 8% and 1 dB as threshold. If you are outside, you are in some way you could be penalized by the authority. In last years, we are committed to run a first evaluation using this methodology, of course, with the relaxed terms, the 2.2 LU and 50%. And we set up a system that more or less in automatical way perform all these measures. And we analyze 20 channels. The one you see here, there are 14 channels for terrestrial television and 6 channels for satellite. And each channel was monitored for 12 days. So we have 1 week, 1 complete week of advertising to analyze. Altogether, we have 240 days, 24 hours of recorded signal that we have analyzed. This is important slide just to show you where the loudness level in Italy are. This is the integrated, the ordinary level, that is the integration of the 5 days for the channel you see before. As you can see, in the middle there is the 23, the target level defined by ABU plus minus 1 dB. As you can see, mostly, but not all the channel transmit at the correct level. That should be exactly 23, but let's give 1 dB of range. But there are some, like this one, the last two, for example, that are 2 or almost 3 dB outside. So they are quite far from the target level. And this is only as concerning the jump from one channel to another. So when you jump from one channel to another, you may have, for example, if you start from the first one to the last one, maybe 4 or 5, 6 dB of difference, just jumping from one channel to another. But just have a look at the situation of advertising loudness. We define some methodology to have in a single shot a quite clear situation of the advertising level for one channel, and so we computed the difference from the ordinary level and the level of the single unit, so that if the advertising loudness is exactly the same as ordinary level, the variable should be 0. They have the same value. And we plot this on a histogram. And as you can see, in this case, you have that most of the advertising have the same level of the ordinary level. In fact, the peak is on 0, and the shape is quite similar. So you have most of the advertising at the same level of the program, and you have some a little bit higher and something lower, where the lower part is greater than the other one. So we can say that more or less this is a good situation. So if you fulfill a situation like this, you might be happy. You have something more than 1, but it's very few. So in percentage, there should be no problem. But you also have some very funny situation. This one, for example, all the advertising is greater than 2 dB and you reach 5 or maybe more than. So you are completely out. And in this case, as you can see, the advertising is low, but it's very spread. So doesn't matter if you are very low with advertising. Advertising is about 2 dB lower than program, but this not make sure that you are free of penalty, because you also have some advertising at 3 or 4 dB. Okay, finish. And so it's not a good position too. Other very funny situation is the one like this one, where you are advertising everywhere and you have several kind of peaks. So you have a very wide span of level from -4 to 2, and another one like this one where you have all the advertising in one very short zone of level from 0 to 1.5, but as you can see, you have a kind of two-peak distribution. One is near 0, the other one is quite high, near 1. So, as you can see, also looking at a very small number of channels, 20, we can say that not only, but more or less each one have a different way of considering the loudness of advertising. There are situations that are completely different. So you cannot say, I take 20 channels and more or less they have the same statistics of the advertising limit. Each channel is own statistics. And if you want to have a completely, this is quite a little bit difficult to understand, but it's very important. Here you have all the situation of our analysis. In red line you have the ordinary level we see before, and in the box is the percent, 95% of the advertising loudness value, and the bar is the minimum and the maximum. So forget the minimum and maximum because it's just one sample, but look at the box and the ordinary level. The box is where the advertising loudness lies. So the advertising of the advertising more or less is inside the box, and the red point is the ordinary level. So as you can see, the difference is very important between some channel. For example, for this channel, you have that all the advertising is greater than the ordinary level because the box is completely out, is up. The other one could be lower, like in this one, and so on. But more or less, also you see that the difference in advertising is quite different. Some boxes are very small, and other boxes are very high. But if we apply the law exactly as it is today, for these years that I remember have very relaxed constraints, 2 LU and 50%, we found 30% channel that made infraction, that is 9% of all the infraction, is 9% of the measure we have done. But what is important to consider at this point that now in Italy we have a law. Maybe it's not the best law you can imagine, but we have a law, we have a system to measure, and we have some preliminary results that clearly show that the situation is not very nice. And so you expect that something happened, but nothing happened. So you have a law, you have everything defined, but nobody knows what will happen today or tomorrow, something like that. So, and that's why, I mean, you need a law. In Italy, we have a law, but nothing happened. You can imagine what will be if you have only an agreement. If you only have agreement, it will be the chaos. Everybody do as they like, you know, because it's just an agreement. So that's why the first 5 minutes of this presentation is important. You know? You have a law, but people doesn't care. Also, if you have a law, you can imagine what happens if you only have an agreement. Maybe the solution is that you have not an Italian law, but you have an European law. So maybe if there is an European law, Italy have to, in some ways, forced to make some controls because Europe push about this. So my will is that in some way, all the countries in Europe define some kind of regulation, maybe inherited from the ABU recommendation, like I've done in USA. And the authority, the European authority, define which kind of control and penalty and threshold should be applied. I don't mind, it could be 6 dB, 10 dB, any one. I don't care of which will be, but there should be this kind of rule. Otherwise, all the works that have been done in the ABU or in the ITU will vanish, because if you are not obliged in some way to use it, probably you will never use it. So That's why. And that's all. Thank you.